The sun was hot, burning the dry ground of the outer colony world. Wind blew dust across the road, carrying heat and silence. Jack, a quiet human farmer, was walking back from the market. He didn't talk much, didn't smile much. His life was simple and crops, animals, and silence. But that day, everything changed. He saw her near the old checkpoint. Lying face down in the dirt, she looked broken, barely moving. Like trash someone had thrown away, her skin was light blue, cracked in places and covered in dirt. Her clothes were torn thin like paper. Around her wrist was a metal band one Jack had seen before during the war. A slave collar. He stopped walking. People passed her without looking. One man even kicked dust at her and laughed, but Jack stood still, staring. Then her eyes opened, big, glowing eyes full of hunger, pain, and fear. She looked at him. Not begging, not asking, just staring, like she had nothing left to lose. That stare hit Jack like a punch to the chest. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully. "You okay?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The woman didn't speak. She tried to push herself up, but fell again. Jack dropped his bag and knelt beside her. He touched her shoulder, and she flinched hard, shaking. "It's all right," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." She was thin, too thin, bones sharp under her skin. Her lips were dry, cracked. She hadn't eaten in days. Maybe longer. Jack looked around, but no one cared. No one stopped. This world didn't care about aliens, especially not starving ones. He picked her up. Surprised by how light she was, she didn't resist, didn't fight. She just let him carry her like a broken doll. Jack walked the long road back to his small home at the edge of the fields. His dog, Rusty, barked once, then sniffed the girl curiously. She opened her eyes again and whispered one word, almost silent. "Water." Jack laid her on the old couch and ran to get a bottle. She drank like someone dying. Water dripping down her chin. Then she passed out. Still holding the bottle tightly, Jack covered her with a blanket and sat nearby. Watching her breathe, she was bruised, scarred, and had burns on her arms. Who had done this to her? He didn't know her name, didn't know her species. But Jack had seen that collar before. It meant she was property to someone. It meant she had escaped. And it meant someone might come looking for her. But he didn't care. He looked at her fragile body, her shaking hands, her scared face. She needed help, not questions. So Jack made soup and waited. The night was quiet, but his mind wasn't. Later, she woke up, sniffing the air. Jack offered her a bowl, and she took it slowly. She ate like she hadn't eaten in weeks, fast, messy, like an animal. But Jack didn't laugh. He just gave her more. And then more. When she was full, she finally looked at him again. Her eyes were soft now, not afraid, she whispered. "Why?" Jack blinked. "Why? What?" "Why help?" She said, voice weak, broken. He leaned back and thought. "I don't know," he said. "Guess I couldn't leave you there." She stared at him for a long time, like trying to understand something. Then, without warning, she leaned forward and put her head on his knee. Jack froze, not knowing what to do. She wasn't crying, but she looked like she wanted to. He reached down and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch this time. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "Rest, eat. Stay as long as you need." The woman didn't reply, but her eyes closed slowly, and she fell asleep against him. Outside, the stars began to shine. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the smell of soup and dust. Jack didn't move. He just sat there, hand on her back, wondering who she really was and what would happen next, because something in his chest told him. This was no ordinary meeting. This was the start of something big, something that would change both of their lives forever. Morning light touched the wooden floor of Jack's small home. The fire in the old stove had burned low, leaving the room warm and quiet. Jack had dozed off on the edge of the couch. His hand was still resting gently on the alien woman's back. She hadn't moved much during the night, but now she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, blinking at the light. She sat up with a jolt, breathing fast, panicked. Looking around like she had forgotten where she was. Jack woke instantly, raising his hands. "Hey, easy," he said calmly. "You're safe here." She stared at him, her chest rising and falling. Then her gaze shifted to the warm soup pot on the stove, and her eyes softened without a word. She got up and walked slowly, her steps weak but focused. She grabbed a spoon and began to eat straight from the pot. Steam rose, the soup spilling a little, but she didn't care. She was hungry, like a dying creature coming back to life. Jack didn't stop her, he just watched. She ate fast, almost choking at times. She licked the spoon, then used her hands, drinking the last bits straight from the pot when it was empty. She dropped the spoon and stared at him again, as if waiting for punishment. "You want more?" he asked gently. She nodded, slowly, like she didn't believe it was real. Jack cooked again, this time eggs and bread. When he placed the plate in front of her, her eyes watered. She didn't cry, but something in her heart cracked open. No one had fed her like this in years. "What's your name?" Jack asked as she ate. She hesitated, then said softly, "Amira." He smiled slightly. "That's a nice name." She looked confused, like no one had ever said that before. "What's yours?" she asked, voice dry. "Jack," he said. "Just Jack?" Amira nodded and kept eating. Her hands shook with every bite, but she didn't stop after the food. She drank more water, then sat still, watching him. Jack didn't press her with questions. He knew she needed time. Later, while she rested, Jack walked outside to tend his crops. He glanced back through the window every few minutes. She didn't run, didn't hide. She just sat wrapped in a blanket, looking around the house. Everything was new to her, the shelves, the old radio, even the floor. Like she hadn't been inside a real home for years. When Jack returned, she was sitting by the window. He noticed her touching the wooden table with gentle fingers, like it was something precious. "Do you remember how you got here?" Jack asked carefully. Amira looked down, then touched the metal collar still around her neck. "I ran," she said. "They were going to sell me again." Jack felt a sharp anger rise inside him, but he stayed calm. "Do you know who they were?" She nodded. "Traitors, cruel ones, from Zirnock Station. They bought me from the last owner. I don't even remember how many it's been. They called me Product 3C, not a name, just a number." Her voice shook, and Jack could see pain behind her words. "I was lucky," she continued. "We landed on this world for repairs. I escaped through the cargo chute, fell hard, ran through the dirt. Then I collapsed on the road, waiting for someone to care." Her voice cracked. "No one did. Until you." Jack stepped closer, his hands clenched. "You're not a number," he said quietly. "You're not anyone's product." He looked at the collar, then asked, "Does it hurt?" "Only when someone controls it," she said. "But it's quiet now." "I think they lost signal." Jack nodded. "We'll get it off. Even if I have to rip it off myself." Amira looked at him, her eyes wide. "You would do that? Risk your life for me?" Jack gave a small smile. "Already did, remember?" "You ate all my soup," she laughed. Just a little soft and broken, but real. It was the first time he saw her smile, and it made something inside him warm up. Something that hadn't felt alive in years. That night, Jack gave her his bed, and he slept on the floor. But when he woke in the middle of the night, she was beside him, curled up close. She hadn't said anything, just moved quietly, needing to feel safe. He didn't push her away. He let her stay, breathing slow and steady beside him. A storm rolled across the sky outside, but inside there was peace. A silent bond had formed, one built on food, kindness, and trust. And while Jack didn't know what tomorrow would bring, he knew he wouldn't let her go hungry again. Not now, not ever. The morning came with clouds and a quiet wind. Jack was outside fixing the water pipes near the side of the house. He heard the soft clink of metal and looked up. Amira was hanging some clothes on the line, her bare feet touching the dry ground. Her long robe moved gently in the breeze. And just for a second, Jack saw something metal, cold and tight, under her neckline. It was the collar, still there, still glowing faintly like a warning sign. He stood up and walked over slowly. Careful not to scare her, she turned when she saw him. Her expression soft but tired. "Amira," he said gently. "Does that thing still hurt you?" She touched her neck quickly, her fingers brushing the edge of the collar. "No," she said quietly. "Not now." Jack looked into her eyes. "Can I see it?" "The full thing." She hesitated, then nodded. She slipped the robe off her shoulder just a little, exposing the collar completely. It was silver, tight, with a blinking red light and alien symbols burned into the metal. There were tiny needle marks beneath it, told scars from shocks or worse. Jack clenched his jaw. "Damn," he whispered. "They used this to control you." Amira looked away. "If I disobeyed, I would feel pain. Sometimes I fainted, other times I screamed." They laughed when it happened. Her voice was low, but her hands were shaking now. Jack stepped closer. "They don't get to laugh anymore." He reached out, then paused. "Can I touch it?" She nodded slowly. His fingers brushed the collar, and he felt the heat of the device. It hummed with a weak energy. There was a small lock on the side, too complex for regular tools. He backed away, his heart pounding with quiet anger. "We need to get this off you," he said firmly, "but not by force. If we break it the wrong way, it might hurt you again." Amira sat down slowly on the bench near the wall. The air was quiet between them for a moment. Then she said, "There was another girl before me." She tried to cut hers off with a sharp wire. It exploded. Her voice broke. "She didn't make it." Jack looked at her, his jaw tight. "They designed these to make sure you stay a prisoner." She nodded. "But I escaped." Her voice had a spark now, like a fire slowly coming alive again. "I ran, I broke the rules. I hid under garbage piles. I crawled through waste vents. I stole food from bins. And then I met you." Jack sat beside her, not too close, not too far. "You're not a slave anymore," he said. "You're free here." Amira turned her head, looking into his eyes. "But am I really free if this thing is still around my neck?" That question hit Jack hard. He didn't have an answer, not yet. But he knew someone who might, that night. After Amira had fallen asleep, curled up under the blanket, Jack pulled out an old communicator from his drawer. It hadn't been used in years, not since the war. He turned it on, wiped the dust, and sent a coded message. "Old friend, I need help with alien tech. Caller type, possible danger if you're still alive. Come fast." He stared at the screen, waiting. Seconds passed, then minutes. Finally, a reply blinked on the screen. "Jack, you're alive. I'm on my way. Don't touch the collar." Some of them are wired to heartbeats now. Jack swallowed hard. Heartbeats, that meant if the collar didn't detect a proper signal, it might activate Penor death, and Amira didn't even know. He turned to look at her sleeping form, her arms wrapped around a pillow like a child. Her breathing was soft and peaceful. She looked safe, but the danger around her was real. Jack sat down quietly and stayed up the rest of the night. His dog Rusty lay beside him, sensing his mood. Jack scratched the dog's ear, whispering, "She's been through hell, boy, and we're not done yet," as dawn broke. Amira woke to the smell of breakfast. She smiled weakly when she saw Jack holding a bowl of warm porridge. "Morning," he said, handing it to her. "Thank you," she replied, her voice softer today. They didn't speak about the collar that morning. Jack didn't want her scared. He only said, "A friend is coming, someone I trust. He knows how to deal with things like that." She nodded and gave him a small, grateful smile. But behind that smile, Jack could still see the pain she carried. And he made a silent promise to himself he would see that collar come off, even if it meant fighting ghosts from the past. Because no woman, human or alien, should have to wear chains just to survive, not while he was around. The sun had barely set when the sky turned dark, not from nightfall, but from the storm clouds rolling in from the east. Lightning flashed far off in the distance, and thunder followed close behind. Jack stood by the window, staring at the horizon. Something didn't feel right. Inside the house, Amira was quiet, sitting by the fire with a blanket over her shoulders. She looked better now, her skin less pale, her eyes more alive. But the collar still blinked faintly around her neck, a reminder of everything she had escaped. Jack hadn't told her what his old war friend had said about heartbeats and traps. He didn't want to scare her. Rusty, Jack's old dog, suddenly lifted his head and growled, low, warning, alert. Jack turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "What is it, boy?" A moment later, bright lights cut through the window. Not lightning headlights. A strange hum followed, low and rising. Not from any vehicle Jack recognized. Then came the sound of landing gear pressing into dirt outside his farm. Jack didn't waste a second. He grabbed the old rifle from under the floorboards and loaded a fresh energy cell. He turned to Amira. "Hide in the cellar." Now, her eyes went wide. "What's happening?" "Go," he said firmly. "Don't argue," she obeyed, moving fast, lifting the rug and climbing into the old storm cellar under the house. Jack dropped the cover and pulled a chair over it, hiding the entrance. Then he stepped outside, rifle in hand. As the wind howled around him, a sleek black hovercraft stood in the yard, its surface polished and humming with silent power. 3 figures stepped out, all tall, dressed in gray armor with smooth masks that covered their faces. One of them spoke, his voice metallic. "We're looking for a fugitive, male property. Serial 3C. Jack didn't blink. "Don't know anything about that." The figure stepped forward, scanning the area. "Records show a heat signature matching her physiology entered this building 2 days ago. We're retrieving company property." "She's not property," Jack growled. "She's a person, not by trade law," the alien replied coldly. "She's bonded, collared, and marked. She belongs to the Xernox Syndicate. Return her, and we will leave you and your land untouched." "And if I don't?" Jack asked, voice low, steady. The figure raised a hand, and the 2 others lifted plasma rifles, aiming straight at him. "Then we burn your home, search the ruins, and take what's ours." Jack didn't move. Behind him, the wind slammed a screen door against the wall, and thunder shook the ground. He gripped the rifle tighter, eyes never leaving the lead alien. "She's not here," he said slowly, "and even if she was, I'd never let you touch her again." The alien cocked his head, amused, a human farm boy playing hero. Brave, but foolish, Jack fired first. A sharp blast of light hit one of the soldiers in the shoulder, sending him flying into the dirt. Rusty barked and ran into the shadows. Flanking them, the other 2 returned fire, plasma bolts tearing through the night air, lighting up the storm like fireflies. Jack dove behind the old tractor. Breathing hard, he fired again, hitting the second alien in the leg. The leader shouted something in a language Jack didn't understand and charged forward. But Jack was ready. He had spent years in the war. This wasn't new to him. He rolled, aimed, and shot. The final blast hit the leader's chest plate and cracked it. Forcing the alien back, the ship's lights blinked. And an alarm began to sound. Inside the cellar, Amira was shaking. Tears in her eyes, she heard every blast, every scream, and when it went quiet. She thought Jack was dead. But the door opened, and Jack climbed down. Dirt on his face, rifle in hand. She rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him. "You're hurt," she said, her voice trembling. "Just a scratch," he replied, breathing hard. "They're gone." For now, she looked into his eyes, heart pounding. "They came for me, didn't they?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, but I didn't let them take you." Amira collapsed into his chest. Her voice breaking, "I don't want to go back." "Ever. You won't," Jack whispered. "Not while I'm breathing, outside." The hovercraft sparked and hissed as it tried to lift off. One engine damaged, the bodies of the soldiers lay silent. But Jack knew more would come. This wasn't over as the rain began to fall, washing blood and dust from the earth. Amira leaned against him, whispering, "Why do you keep helping me?" Jack didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago, and because I care." The wind howled louder, but inside the cellar, it was warm. Not from fire, but from something growing between them. Something stronger than fear, and Jack knew, deep inside, he would fight the entire galaxy, just to keep her safe. The storm outside grew stronger. Lightning flashed again and again, painting the fields in white for a moment. Then came thunder, loud and angry. Shaking the earth, rain poured down hard, soaking the ground and washing away the blood that had fallen. Inside the house, Jack sat at the table. Cleaning his old war rifle, his hands were steady. His face calmed, his eyes told a different story. He had killed before, during the war, but this time felt different. He didn't fight for orders or medals. He fought to protect someone who had no one else. Amira sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, watching him in silence. The collar on her neck blinked slower now, as if running out of power. But it was still a threat, and Jack hated the sight of it. "You knew how to fight," she said softly. Breaking the silence, Jack nodded. "Long time ago. I was part of the border war. Never thought I'd pick up a rifle again." She lowered her head. "Because of me. You had to kill." Jack looked at her, his voice firm but gentle. "No, because of them, I had to protect you. You didn't ask for this life. They forced it on you." The wind howled louder. Slamming the windows, Rusty barked at the door once, then lay down near Jack's feet. The dog didn't sleep anymore, not after the attack. He was guarding too. Jack placed the rifle on the table and looked at Amira. "We need to talk about that collar," he said. "We have to remove it. Soon?" She nodded. But fear flashed in her eyes. "If we break it wrong." "It might hurt me, I know," Jack said. "That's why I called someone who knows how to deal with this. He should be here by morning." Amira touched the collar lightly, as if trying to forget it was even there. Her voice shook. "All my life, I was told I belonged to others, that I had no choice, no rights, no name." She looked at Jack. "But you gave me food, warmth, a bed. Why?" Jack didn't speak right away. He stood, walked to the window, watching the rain fall in sheets. Then he said, "Because I've been alone too. Felt forgotten, tossed aside after the war. I know what silence feels like, what hunger does to the soul." He turned to her, eyes soft but deep. "And when I saw you lying in the dust, I saw myself." Amira got up and walked over to him. She looked fragile, but something strong shone behind her glowing eyes now. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered. "No one has ever seen me, not like this." He reached out and gently brushed a strand of wet hair from her face. You deserve to be seen. You're not a number. Not property. Just then, a loud noise echoed from outside, a vehicle approaching fast. Not from the sky, but the road. Jack moved fast. Grabbing the rifle and stepping to the door, Rusty growled low again. Alert, Amira stayed behind, frozen in place. Was it the man Jack had called? Or someone worse? The engine stopped near the gate, and a figure stepped out. Tall, wearing a wide coat soaked from rain, he raised a hand and shouted, "It's me, Jack. Don't shoot." Jack lowered the rifle slowly, a smile breaking across his tired face. "Kellen," he said, opening the door, "you still alive, old dog?" The man laughed and stepped in, shaking off water, still breathing. And still breaking alien tech for fun. Kellen spotted Amira and paused, his smile fading. "That's the girl?" he asked softly. Jack nodded. "Her name's Amira." Kellen's eyes fell on the collar. And he whistled low. "Model 9, a bind collar. Zernock property class. Nasty little thing. Rigged 2 biosignals and pain receptors. Can you take it off?" Jack asked, stepping forward. Kellen knelt in front of Amira, studying the collar carefully. She stayed still, shaking a little. But Jack held her hand. She didn't let go. Kellen tapped the collar gently, pulling out a small scanner. "It's been deactivated remotely. But the self-defense system is still active if we mess up. It could spike her brain with a shock." Jack's jaw tightened. "So what do we do?" "I need an hour, maybe 2, Kellen said. "And total silence? One mistake. And well, let's not make that mistake." Amira looked at Jack. Her voice a whisper. "I trust you." Jack squeezed her hand. "And I won't let anything happen to you." Kellen rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Wires, lights, tools clicks, beeps, gentle hums. The storm outside roared, but inside, the only sound was the careful touch of someone trying to break a chain without breaking the soul trapped inside it. For the first time in years, Amira felt something inside her she hadn't felt since childhood. Hope, the storm outside, was fading. But inside the house, every second was heavy. Jack sat beside Amira, holding her hand. Kellen knelt in front of her, his tools clicking softly as he worked on the collar. Drops of sweat rolled down his forehead. Even though the room was cool, he was focused. Breathing slow, not blinking, Amira sat perfectly still. Afraid that even one twitch could trigger pain, she had lived with this collar so long. It felt like part of her body, but now, for the first time, she had hope it might come off. Her eyes stayed on Jack, and she didn't let go of his hand, not once. "Almost there," Kellen muttered. "Just one more lock." He inserted a tiny device that made a soft, buzzing sound. A blue light blinked. The collar sparked hand. Then, with a soft hiss, it opened. The metal unclamped itself and fell to the floor with a cold thud. Amira gasped, her whole body shaking. She grabbed her neck, breathing hard, for a moment. She didn't say anything, just kept touching her bare skin. No pain, no heat, no blinking red light. Jack reached for her gently. "You're free," he said softly. "It's off." Amira's eyes filled with tears. "Not from fear, but from something deeper," she whispered. "It's really gone." Then she cried, not loud, not wild, but soft and broken. Tears ran down her cheeks as she curled into Jack's chest, holding him tightly. He wrapped his arms around her and held her like something precious, because to him, she was. Kellen sat back and sighed, wiping his hands. "Hardest one I've done in years," he said. "But worth it." Amira looked up at him through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice shaking, he nodded, giving her a kind smile. "You're welcome, kid." Later, when the sky cleared and stars returned above the farm, they sat around a small fire in the yard. Amira sat wrapped in a new blanket Jack had given her. Warm and soft. She looked up at the sky, Quiet, thoughtful. Her neck still felt strange light. Empty but in a good way. Jack handed her a cup of warm tea. She took it. Their fingers brushing briefly, Kellen leaned back against the old wooden post, sipping his own tea. "So, what now?" he asked, looking at Jack. "What's the plan?" Jack glanced at Amira, then back at the fire. "We lay low for a while. Stay quiet. They might come back. But we'll be ready. I can set up a perimeter alarm," Kellen offered. Old tech, silent but deadly accurate. Jack nodded. "Appreciate it." Amira looked down at her cup, then said softly, "I was taken when I was 15. My village was attacked. My parents tried to fight. They didn't survive." Her voice cracked. But she kept talking. "I was sold, traded, renamed, used." Over and over. Jack didn't interrupt. He let her speak, her voice soft but heavy with memory. "I stopped counting how many hands I passed through. They called me product, animal, tool." She looked at Jack. Tears in her eyes again. "But you asked for my name?" Jack reached out, his hand gently brushing her fingers. "I saw a person, not property," he said. "I always will." She gave a small laugh. Through tears. "It's strange, feeling safe. It makes me scared. Like it could be taken any moment." "It won't," Jack said firmly. "Not while I'm alive." She looked into his eyes, searching for doubt, but she didn't find any. Only truth, only warmth. Kellen stood, brushing dust from his coat. "I should leave before morning." "Don't want satellites picking me up." Jack stood and shook his hand. "Thank you, Kellen." Amira stood too, and, after a second, hugged him gently. Kellen looked surprised, but smiled and hugged back. "Take care of each other," he said, before walking off into the dark with a grin. "You two make a good pair." After he left, the yard grew quiet again. Only crickets and night wind filling the space. Amira sat beside Jack on the porch steps, watching the stars. Her head leaned softly on his shoulder, and he didn't move. He just let her rest there, both of them breathing in peace. "I want to learn things," she said suddenly. "How to cook, how to grow food, maybe even read better." Jack smiled. "I'll teach you everything I know." She turned and looked at him. "Can I stay here? Not just for safety, but for me, for us." Jack looked at her glowing eyes, the way they reflected the stars. "You don't have to ask," he said. "This is your home now." 2 and 4, the first time in years, Amira smiled, not the broken, sad kind, but a real smile, full of light, full of life. Because the past could never be erased, but with Jack, she had a future. The days passed slowly, peacefully. Jack's small farm came back to life. Crops grew tall. The soil felt rich, and the air smelled of fresh bread and rain. And Amira, she changed. She smiled more often. She laughed at Jack's quiet jokes, learned to knead dough, planted flowers beside the porch. She even learned to call Rusty by name, and the dog followed her like a shadow. For the first time in years, she was not afraid of mornings. She looked forward to them. The collar was gone, but the scars on her neck remained. Jack offered to get them removed, but she said no. "I want to remember where I came from," she said, "and how far I've come." One evening, as the twin suns began to set, casting golden lights across the fields, Amira stood by the fence, watching the sky turn orange and pink. Jack walked up behind her, holding something in his hand, wrapped in soft cloth. She turned to him with a smile. "The bread is almost done." He smiled back, but his voice was deeper than usual. "I have something to ask you." Amira tilted her head. Curious, Jack unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small ring handmade, shaped from melted metal and carved wood. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. Amira froze, her eyes wide, lips parting in surprise. "You?" Jack nodded, nervous now. "I know we come from different worlds, and your past wasn't easy, But I want a future with you." He took a breath. "Will you marry me, Amira?" She stared at the ring, then at Jack's eyes. Her heart thudded in her chest, full of emotion she couldn't describe. She stepped forward, gently taking the ring in her hand. Then she whispered, "Yes." Jack exhaled, a big smile spreading across his face. She laughed, tears forming again, happy this time. She slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then she threw her arms around him, holding him tight as the last light of the suns touched the earth. They married 1 week later, under the twin suns, on the very land where he first saved her. There were no crowds, no fancy clothes, no music from rich halls. Only a few kind neighbors who had seen Amira working, laughing, living. They didn't ask where she came from. They only saw who she had become. Amira wore a simple white dress made from fabric Jack had traded in town. She had tied her glowing blue hair back with wildflowers. Her eyes sparkled as she walked barefoot across the field toward Jack. He stood waiting under the old tree, wearing his cleanest shirt, holding her favorite bread in his hand instead of flowers. She smiled when she saw a tove course. Jack would offer bread at their wedding. The ceremony was short, but every word was heavy with meaning. Jack looked into her eyes and said, "You were never property. You were never a number. You are my heart, my future, my home," Amira replied, her voice strong. "And you are the one who saw me when I was invisible. You gave me a name, a voice, a life. Now I give you all of me." Freely and forever, they kissed under the sunset, as Rusty barked and the small group clapped. And somewhere in the sky, a shooting star passed silent and bright, a blessing from the universe itself. Later that night, they sat on the porch, hand in hand. Amira leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. Watching the stars rise again, there was no collar on her neck. Only a tiny necklace Jack had made with a stone from their field. She wore it proudly, not as a mark of ownership, but as a symbol of belonging by choice, not force. "I never thought I'd live long enough to be happy," she whispered. Jack kissed the top of her head. "You're not just alive, Amira," he said. "You're finally free." She looked up at him, glowing softly in the moonlight. "I was lost, cold, and starving. And then you found me." Jack smiled. "No, Amira. We found each other." The night was silent after that. Only the wind moved gently across the fields. But inside their hearts, there was music of healing, of hope, of a love that no cage could ever hold. And so, the starving alien woman who once collapsed on a dusty road became the wife of a quiet human man who had nothing to offer except everything. Together, they built a life not just out of food and shelter, but out of trust, laughter, and quiet nights under twin suns.